Today, I want to talk a little bit about using social media as a source of information. Now, off the top here, I just want to answer the question, why on earth talk about social media in church? Like, what's the deal with that? So, here's the deal with that. When Jesus was here on earth, he talked about stuff that was highly relevant to the people that he was mixing with. And their culture was far more religious than ours is. 100 years ago here in Canada, things were far more religious than they are now. And so he talked about, religious things because that's what was relevant to them. But he led by example, and so he calls us also to talk about things that are relevant to us. And social media is one of those things that is highly relevant in our culture today. I would venture to say that probably the vast majority of us are involved in some form of social media. Our live stream is even on Facebook, which is, of course, social media. And some of you may have even heard of Martin Luther. He was the founder of the Protestant church back in the 1600s. And Martin Luther actually made the statement that if I have not preached about something that is relevant to my audience, I have not preached the gospel. That's how strongly he believed it was important for preachers to be talking about the things that actually are where the rubber meets the road. And we are a church that really tries to be where people live. Where the rubber meets the road is where we want to be relating to people. So, in the last 20 years, social media has just taken the world by storm, and it's created a lot of storms too. It's probably a year ago, maybe a little more, I happened to accidentally find myself in a storm on social media. Unbeknownst to me, two of my Facebook friends were having a big debate about something theological, and I didn't have a clue. But there was a theological thing that came up on Facebook, and I thought it was really well done, and so I liked it. Well, it turns out that fit well with one of my friends' opinions on this thing that they were debating. And so the other friend thought I was taking sides with my other friend, and so they came out attacking me for what I had liked. And then all kinds of other people piled on with their opinions, and I was like, I just liked something. I had no idea. And Shelley said to me, "You didn't know this debate that was going on between these two?" I had no idea. And she goes, "You have no idea the firestorm you have started." Well, that's just how social media can work. I just stepped right into it without even realizing what I was doing. So today, I want to talk a little bit about how we as Christians can relate to this phenomenon in our culture called social media. And I'm going to look at a bunch of different verses from different parts of the Bible. And the reason I'm using the Bible is because that's kind of like the framework, if you will, that we use to build our faith on as Christians. So I want to start in the first half of the Bible. It's actually pretty close to the halfway point in the Bible in a book called Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is a wisdom book, so there's lots and lots of wisdom sayings in there. Most of them were written by a guy named Solomon. He was a king in Israel. and he was considered one of the wisest kings that Israel ever had. Excuse me. And so he writes in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 17, "The first to speak in court sounds right until the cross-examination begins." So if you've ever been in a court case, the person that leads the case gets to make their argument first, and if they're a skilled lawyer, they will sound very believable. And it's very easy to go, wow, this is a open and shut case. Sounds like he's got it perfectly nailed. But then the cross-examination starts to happen, and they start to go back and forth, and you start to realize, wow, there's more to this story than what that first guy let on. Well, I read a book just a couple months ago about social media, and it confirmed something that I had suspected, and I'd heard other people say, that most social media platforms are actually controlled by what they call algorithms. So the algorithms are set up so that they track the kinds of things that you are interested in. So it tracks your likes, it tracks the things you share, it tracks the things you read, it actually even tracks how long you take reading each thing. So it gauges your interest level by how long you are actually on a particular article or post or things like that. And this book confirmed it, but then as we went online as a church here, we actually receive from Facebook a report every month telling us how long people were watching our Facebook posts every time. How many people watched for 3 seconds or less, how many watched for 3 minutes or less, and so on and so forth. So Facebook is really keeping track of everything you do on Facebook. Now, the reason why they do this is because they've got the algorithms programmed so that you will get to see more of the things you're interested in. So if you read something of a certain genre or theme or something like that, the algorithm picks up on that and says, Dallas likes horses. Okay, we will send you more things about horses. And so you will end up seeing all kinds more posts about horses or whatever it is that you are interested in. And the thinking behind this is that people like to have more information about the things that they're interested in, which of course is true. And the subtle part of this is when there's political things or things that are highly controversial, Facebook actually tracks which side of the controversy you land on. So if there's a controversy about global warming, Facebook will notice which side of the debate you are spending the most time looking at, and it will feed you more and more posts that are similar to the ones that you are attracted to, which gives you the illusion that lots of people agree with you. As a matter of fact, it'll give you the illusion that most people actually agree with your particular perspective. And for insecure people, that can be highly attractive. Makes you feel like, wow, I'm not, an outlier. I'm not one of those oddballs that is just out there in my own world. Look at all these people that think just like me. And of course, that is one of the reasons why social media is so addictive. because it makes us feel like we are part of a community of like-minded people. Let's look at another scripture. This one is close to the back of the Bible in a tiny little book called 2 Timothy. And in chapter 2, starting in verse 15, there we read, "Work hard so you can present yourself to God and receive his approval. Be a good worker, one who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly explains the word of truth. Avoid worthless, foolish talk. That only leads to more godless behavior. This kind of talk spreads like cancer, as in the case of Hymenaeus and Philetus. They have left the path of truth, claiming that the resurrection of the dead has already occurred. In this way, they have turned some people away from the faith." So that one sentence there that I really kind of want to unpack here is, avoid worthless, foolish talk that only leads to more godless behavior. And this kind of talk spreads like cancer. So there's lots and lots of people who love to engage in useless arguments and have no real interest in learning. They just like to debate. They really are not there to help anybody. They just love to get a reaction. They just like to agitate. And it's very safe to do that from behind a screen. Nobody can punch you. Nobody can even yell at you. All they can do is write in all capital letters. But we can handle that. And so, social media is the perfect place for those kind of people. But here's the thing. We recognize that that is a trap. This scripture says, don't go down that road. Don't engage in all this useless stuff that really does not matter at the end of the day. Or if it does matter, that may not be the right forum, because you can't convince somebody of something if they're really not interested in being convinced. They're just interested in arguing about it. Now, I suspect that the reason why Paul, who wrote this letter to Timothy, his protege, was because Timothy probably felt like he needed to stand up for the truth. And so he would get sucked into these arguments because he needed to stand up and make sure the truth was heard. And so he would get sucked into these debates with all kinds of people. And the Greeks loved these kinds of debating situations. Some of them would spend their whole day just debating with people, all kinds of different things. They were just looking for it. And it's almost exactly the same now on social media. People are just scrolling around looking for debates over different situations. And Paul is saying to Timothy, don't get sucked into that. It's a waste of energy. And I think God is saying to us as Jesus followers, don't get sucked into debates online. It's just a waste of energy. Even if you think you're standing up for the truth, you're really not in the right forum for that, because most people online aren't there to learn. They're just there to debate. And it just drains you emotionally. Now, I've come across people who will actually manipulate you into debating. They will say, well, if you remain silent and say nothing, you are actually taking sides, and so you have to speak up. To those people, I say, humbug. You do not have to speak up online. You do not have to take sides. That is just pure manipulation. And don't fall for it. Let's go back to the book of Proverbs. In chapter 15, verse 28, it says, "The heart of the godly thinks carefully before speaking, and the mouth of the wicked overflows with evil words." So what does this mean? What it means is that we as believers are called to more thoughtful conversations. Not emotionally reactionary conversations, but more thought-provoking and more deep-going conversations. Let's face it, spiritual conversations by their very nature are more thoughtful. We don't react to deep spiritual topics as much as we genuinely just think together with other people. We work through with other people. And social media is actually a very poor platform for thoughtful conversations. Social media, oh, thank you, Daryl. Social media is actually, by its very nature, set up for short tidbits of conversation. Was it 158 characters is maximum for a tweet or something like that? I can't remember. But most social media platforms are set up to be very short little bursts of reaction to something. And it's not at all enough space in social media to do more thoughtful, nuanced conversations about things. The whole idea behind social media is that we should just have quick, off the top of our heads, reactions to different thought or different controversial kinds of posts. And so it's supposed to move very quickly. I mean, you think about, is it Snapchat where it disappears after a few minutes or something like that? Like that, the whole idea is that you don't spend very long on any one topic. You just react to it and then move on to the next thing. And so thoughtful conversation is just almost impossible in that platform and in that environment. And so I think we as Christians probably do better if we want to have conversations that genuinely impact people's lives if we use a different medium than social media. A couple chapters away in chapter 18 of Proverbs again, verse 13, it says, "Spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish." Yikes. That's pretty straight up, isn't it? And yet that is exactly what social media is geared to do. Spout off before you really have studied something carefully. And this is actually one of the reasons why social media and even just the internet as a whole creates so much frustration for people who are trained professionals in an area. For those of you that are doctors, don't raise your hand, but I have still to meet a doctor that loves Dr. Google. We get little tidbits of information, and then we think we know what the issues are, and we start arguing with people that have studied this stuff in depth for years on end. And it's not just doctors. There's other professions as well. Teachers run up against the same thing. I'm sure lawyers do as well, and politicians run up against this all the time. And believe it or not, pastors do as well. So social media actually sets us up for arrogance about what we think we know. I want to go back to the back of the Bible again, to another little book called James, chapter 1, verse 19. And there it says, "Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry." That's exactly opposite of the way social media is set up to work. Social media is be quick to spout off and get really emotional. And the more emotional, the better. People love that. When I read that book a couple months ago, I was a little bit surprised initially when I read this. It was written by a couple of researchers, Justin Tosi and Brandon Warmke. And they said this, and it makes sense when you think about it, that most social media posts are actually posted for two reasons: likes and shares. The more likes you get and the more shares you get, the better your post is. It's not really about anything else than likes and shares in most cases. And so what happens is it encourages us to pick a side in any controversial issue and go hard in that direction, because the more hard you go in one direction, the more likes and shares you're going to get from those people that are on that side of the issue. And the more haters you're going to get on the other side. But the more haters you get, the stronger the polarization and the more interaction there's going to be on your post, which is good for your algorithm. It gets the thing noticed, and the social media platforms take notice that, oh, this is somebody who really knows how to stir the pot. And you get respect. And so the whole philosophy behind social media lends itself to affirm each other in the areas where we agree and hate on each other in the areas where we disagree. And I don't think that's what Jesus calls us to. Jesus didn't call us to hate on anybody. He called us to be lovers of people. So, see, social media was actually never intended to help people learn from each other. It was actually created to foster polarization. It was actually intended to make things unrealistically simplistic, to take all the nuance out of it, make everything very black or white, and then you have to take sides. When we use social media, or the internet for that matter in many cases, for information, we end up living on something that researchers Kruger and Dunning called Mount Stupid. So back in 1990s, in the late part of the 1990s, Dunning and Kruger did a big study on how confident we feel about what we know. And what they discovered is that the curve goes like this. So when you know nothing, you have no confidence. But when you know a little bit, that's when you have the highest level of confidence. How is the saying going? How is it the saying goes? You know, just enough to be dangerous. So your confidence level that you know what you're talking about is at its highest when you have just a little bit of knowledge. Once you get past that point, you start to realize, whoa, there's more to this than what I realized. And the more you discover, the more your confidence level sags, because you realize, whoa, what is it? What else is there that I don't understand? And so you got more and more careful about your position on any given topic. And guess what? Social media gives you just that little bit of information. And people fall for this every day. I've fallen for this. You read 2 or 3 posts online on a topic, and you are convinced you know exactly what you're talking about. And nobody can tell you any different. And so you end up picking a side and going strongly in one direction, and you're doing it without recognizing that you don't have all the information. There's a whole whack of information you don't have yet. And guess what? We're gullible. It makes us gullible. That's the bottom line. And I'm afraid that social media actually may end up raising a whole generation of people that live on Mount Stupid. It's a sobering thought, but it's a very real possibility. So how do you know if you're living on Mount Stupid? I mean, if you don't know what you don't know, how do you know if you're there or not? Well, let me give you a few clues. One of them I've already talked about. If you have really strong emotions about a topic, chances are you haven't studied it enough. Because the truth is, the more sides of something you look at, the more it will neutralize your emotions. You will start to see things from other perspectives, and you'll start to go, yeah, I guess there is other ways of looking at this. And you will start to see that, yeah, that makes sense as well. And that makes sense as well. And you'll be more hesitant to take a side. You'll be more hesitant to speak out strongly in favor of a particular perspective, because you'll recognize that there are legitimate other perspectives as well. And as your emotions soften, you become less radical, less dogmatic, if you will, you are actually coming down off of Mount Stupid. And it's interesting because people that study a topic more broadly, and I'm not just talking about, studying more and more of their own side of the argument. I'm talking about people that look at all sides of the argument, typically mellow out as they do. And I wonder if sometimes the reason why older people tend to mellow out as they get older is because they've learned over the years that there's more than one way to look at things. There's legitimate perspectives on all sides. And so you become less and less worked up about making sure people see it your way. It's interesting, isn't it, that in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23, it talks about something called the fruit of the Spirit. It's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control. Sounds pretty mellow to me. It doesn't sound like the radical fire, I'm going to pin you to the wall kind of personality, does it? So I know that I've come across here pretty negative about social media. And I just want to kind of wrap up here by saying, I think there is a place for social media, actually. I don't think it's all bad by any means. So what is it? What are the good aspects of social media? And how can we focus on those things at the same time as we don't fall prey to some of the dangerous parts? So here's one of the big advantages of social media, I feel, and that is staying connected with people that live far away from you. That is something we can do today that we could not do 20 years ago nearly as easily. We can follow at arm's length what's going on in other people's lives if they're posting. And of course, social media now has developed into, phone calling and, video calling and stuff like that. So we can connect with people through that. And I think that's a very good thing, especially for people, that are far away. Now, I do not believe that social media is a good way to connect with the people in the room next door. If it replaces you actually having in-person conversations with the person upstairs, I think that's not good. But if it helps you stay connected with people that are living in another part of Canada or another part of the world, I think that's a very good thing. The other thing that I think social media can do is bless people. I think you can post things online that are a blessing to other people. And I think that is a wonderful thing that we as Jesus followers can do. Post things that are encouraging, post things that are loving and kind and gentle, all of those things that we said were the fruit of the Spirit. Those things we can post online, and I think it's a beautiful thing when people do that. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you were scrolling on Facebook and there was just post after post after post of encouragement, of people saying, you know what, life is good. You're a wonderful person. We love you. I would be all over social media that's like that. And so if we can be those kind of people, I think we are being like Jesus. If Jesus lived today, I think those are the kinds of things he would be using social media for. I think he would be staying connected with people that are far away, and I think he would be blessing people. And I think that's what we can do. And we can avoid, if we're intentional, some of these other traps that easily happen on social media. I remember a few months ago hearing a story about somebody who actually heard about another person on Facebook who was in crisis. I think their house actually flooded. And they posted something on Facebook about, we're in this middle of this crisis and, please say a prayer for us or something like that. And this person saw it on Facebook and dropped everything they had, got in their vehicle and drove over there and actually got their hands dirty helping them deal with their crisis situation. And I remember thinking when I heard that story, now that is social media at its best. That is the way Jesus calls us to live. And I believe we can do this. We can be those kind of people. So my question to all of us today is, are you using social media in a positive way? Are there things that you could do to make it even more positive? Here's my question. Does social media make you mellow or not? If it's not making you mellow, why not? Is there things there, or are there things there that you might need to tweak a bit in order to have more of the fruit of the Spirit as a result of social media? More love, more joy, more peace, kindness, and gentleness? I'm going to pray here in a minute, and I'm going to pray that Jesus helps us to be like him when we're online. And if you want that prayer for yourself as well, I invite you to just join me in that prayer. Dear Jesus, I want to be like you when I'm on Facebook, when I'm on Instagram, when I'm on Twitter or any of the other LinkedIn or whatever media I find myself on. I want to be like you. I want to be a light. I'll be honest, there are times where I find myself very tempted to get sucked into things that are not loving, not kind, not gentle, where I get dragged up on Mount Stupid. I don't want to live there. And so, Jesus, I pray that you would help me. Help me to be like you. In Jesus' name, amen.